Mark and I always begin our mornings the same way. While I'm preparing breakfast in the kitchen, my husband embraces me from behind. "Good morning, honey," his warm voice whispers in my ear. I instinctively close my eyes. The sense of security I feel in Mark's arms. The gentle scent of soap. A morning just like any other. Yet each of these ordinary moments is precious to me. Through the windows of our home in Greenwich's upscale neighborhood, the fresh early summer sunlight streams in. A quiet Sunday morning. The faint sound of church bells can be heard from the neighborhood. At this hour on a holiday, our neighbors are probably still deep in sleep. As I retie the strings of my white apron, I take eggs from the refrigerator. I know Mark's preferences perfectly. Poached eggs with a runny yolk, served with freshly toasted English muffins. Accompanied by a salad of fresh organic vegetables from Whole Foods. "What's for brunch today?" Mark asks while switching on the coffee maker. "Mom's special blueberry muffins. She said she'd bake them this morning." We always have this kind of conversation on weekend mornings. Mark's mother Elizabeth was a kind woman who doted on her son. A retired nurse whose elegant white hair suited her well. She always wore pastel-colored clothes and made tending to her garden roses her daily routine. Inviting us for Sunday brunch every week was, I believe, her way of expressing motherly love. Everything happens for a reason. That's my favorite saying. Yes, everything happens for a reason. Meeting Mark must have been destiny too. 2 years ago, when I first saw him at a mutual friend's garden party, my heart moved quietly but surely. Tall and dressed in a white linen shirt, he was like a perfect gentleman straight out of a romantic movie. As a manager at J.P. Morgan, he had a gentle and thoughtful personality. On our first date in Manhattan, I fell in love with his slightly shy smile. I still vividly remember the day he proposed to me during a picnic in Central Park. In the soft light of dusk, more beautiful than the diamond's sparkle was the love reflected in his eyes. And the joy when we chose this house in Greenwich together. White walls, green lawn, roses blooming in the garden. Every day felt like a dream. Elizabeth's house is a large traditional colonial mansion. Opening the heavy wooden front door always envelopes us in warm air. Family photos adorn the mantelpiece, where Mark's childhood smile still watches over me warmly. In the living room furnished with antique pieces, we often spend peaceful Sunday afternoons over tea. My mother-in-law teaches me gardening. "We planted this rose when Mark was 5, she reminisces nostalgically, and watching her profile, I secretly imagine if someday I too will be able to share such memories with my own child. Learning how to care for roses and spending peaceful time together had become our Sunday pleasure. Every morning, I check the pearl necklace at my throat. A precious treasure Mark gave me on our wedding day. It seemed to symbolize our happy marriage. And this morning, I had gained a certainty. In the spotless bathroom with its gleaming marble counter, I stared at the pregnancy test with trembling hands. Positive. My reflection in the mirror breaks into a radiant smile. Could there be any greater happiness? The crystallization of Mark's and my love. The beating of a new life. Everything was perfect. Sunday afternoon at 3 o'clock. Our car was heading down the familiar road to his mother's house. Greenwich's street trees gently filtered the early summer sunlight. From the passenger seat, I kept stealing glances at Mark's profile. There seemed to be something shadowing his refined profile today. But perhaps that was just my imagination. Do you think Mom will be happy? I kept repeating the same question in the car. I'm sure she will, I continued, as if convincing myself. After all, we've been married for 2 years. Mom's been saying she wants to see her grandchild. Mark tightened his grip on the steering wheel slightly, his expression stiffening. Yes, of course. His voice rang hollow. But I didn't notice. Happiness had filled my heart so completely that it masked even the slightest sense of something being wrong. The car entered the quiet residential area. Amid the familiar scenery, I was thinking about the baby. There's a lovely park around here. I'm looking forward to taking walks with the child. The thought warmed my heart. Elizabeth's house came into view. The well-maintained front garden was abloom with colorful roses. The white roses planted beside the entrance were particularly stunning. Just last week, my mother-in-law had taught me how to care for them. The large white house showed its warm presence as if welcoming us. Opening the front door, the scent of blueberry muffins wafted through the air. Elizabeth's homemade treats always soothed my heart. Today was supposed to be a special celebration. I believed she would surely be delighted to hear the baby news. Entering the living room, Elizabeth sat on the antique sofa wearing an elegant floral dress. Her white hair seemed to shine more softly than usual. The table was set with the usual silver cutlery and Wedgwood tea set. Sunlight streaming through the windows reflected off the polished silver, making tiny particles of light dance around the room. "Welcome, Linda." Elizabeth stood up and embraced me gently. There was the usual warmth in it. A faint scent of lavender tickled my nose. Mark seemed somewhat restless, pacing back and forth in front of the fireplace. His footsteps echoed unnaturally in the quiet room. "Would you like something to drink?" Elizabeth asked while pouring tea. The amber liquid of the tea poured into the cup in an elegant curve. "Thank you." Mom, actually, I have wonderful news." I instinctively glanced at Mark. He nodded stiffly. At that moment, I thought I saw his hands trembling slightly. "What is it, Linda?" Elizabeth's voice held its usual warmth. Taking a deep breath, I wove together the precious words. "I'm pregnant. We're having a baby." A moment of silence fell. Elizabeth's teacup slowly slipped from her hands. A dry clinking sound echoed, and tea began staining the white carpet. Like an omen of the tragedy to come. The color drained from Elizabeth's face. Her hands began to shake. "Don't have it." My smile froze. My heart pounded violently. "What?" Elizabeth suddenly stood up, her voice trembling. She looked like a different person, unlike anyone I'd ever seen before. "Please, don't have this child." "Mother." Mark cried out in panic. His voice mixed with fear and urgency. At that moment, everything began to go wrong. Elizabeth's trembling hands knocked the tableware onto the floor one after another. Broken cup fragments made tragic patterns on the white carpet. A silver spoon rolled across the floor, hitting the wall with a dull sound. In the frozen atmosphere, Mark's panicked expression stood out. He tried to rush to his mother but seemed to stumble. His gesture seemed to hide some emotion beyond mere surprise. My mind went blank. I couldn't understand. I didn't want to understand. Was this a dream? But what was happening before my eyes was all too vivid reality. Outside the window, birds were singing. That casual sound made this abnormal situation even more stark. Elizabeth kept repeating the same words through her tears. Her appearance was unimaginable from her usually elegant and dignified self. "You must not have it, you must not have it." Mark was desperately trying to calm his mother. But his hands were shaking too. And whether that trembling was from fear or guilt, I couldn't tell. I had a feeling that behind my mother-in-law's abnormal reaction lay some grave secret. But at that time, I had neither the courage nor the composure to solve that mystery. The drive home was enveloped in heavy silence. Outside was growing dim. Street lights were coming on one after another. What was that all about? My voice was so small I could barely hear it myself. My hand unconsciously reached for the pearl necklace at my throat. Mark gripped the steering wheel tightly, answering nervously. I could tell he was pretending to concentrate on driving. Mother's been a bit neurotic lately. Even so, I couldn't continue. Mark fell silent too. Outside the car window, the twilight townscape flowed quietly by. A happy family advertisement was displayed in a luxury boutique's show window. But the beauty of the world I had seen until just now was nowhere to be found. That night, I couldn't sleep. Next to me, Mark was breathing more deeply than usual. But was it really peaceful sleep? To me, it seemed like he might be pretending to sleep. Morning of my second month of pregnancy. From behind me as I stood in the kitchen, Mark approached. Lately, his footsteps seemed strangely nervous to my ears. While birds sang their morning song outside the window, only this house seemed wrapped in an eerily unnatural quiet. "Drink this." What Mark held out was a mug containing an unfamiliar brown liquid. The floral pattern painted on the white porcelain seemed strangely ominous, unlike before. Mother said it's good herbal tea for pregnant women. I hesitantly accepted the mug. There was something off about the sweet, lukewarm scent that reached my nose. But that might just be due to changes in my condition from pregnancy. I've become sensitive to smells lately. Thank you. The moment I took a sip, a strange sensation spread through my chest. It was definitely not pleasant. A burning sensation in my throat, and a feeling like my stomach was freezing. From that day, my condition began to change dramatically. I was hit with abnormal drowsiness, and uncontrollable dizziness and nausea. My appetite completely disappeared. This was clearly different from normal morning sickness. I would wake up to severe abdominal pain in the morning and be plagued by unexplained fevers at night. "Are you okay? You don't look well." Mark looked at me with a worried face. But I felt like some other emotion lurked behind those eyes. Relief? Expectation? Or guilt? Unreadable emotions swirled in the depths of his eyes. In the doctor's examination room, in the sterile space with its scent of disinfectant, I waited for the examination results with trembling hands. The wall clock's second hand ticked abnormally loud. The test results looked normal. The doctor's words, spoken with a gentle smile, didn't ease my anxiety at all. Rather, those words seemed disconnected from reality. "But this nausea..." The words trailed off. I didn't know how to explain. My head was fuzzy, and I couldn't think straight. Pregnancy symptoms vary by individual. "But if you're worried, let's do another checkup next week." The doctor's words seemed to come from far away. As I left the examination room, Mark's expression, sitting in the waiting room chair, seemed to distort for a moment. At night, Mark spent more and more time at his computer. The blue-white light cast eerie shadows on his face. When I approached, he would hurriedly close windows. Such gestures increased day by day. Around 2 a.m. when the living room clock struck, he would always go to his computer. The sound of typing keys and occasional deep sighs. It was like the sound of someone being chased and bound by something. One day, while putting away laundry, an unfamiliar bankbook fell from the inside pocket of Mark's suit. Opening it, I found records of huge withdrawals I knew nothing about. My heart began racing. On the back of the bankbook was the name of an unknown facility. And the same amount was being withdrawn every month. And then, the suddenly increased business trips. Longer phone calls than usual. Late-night emails. Everything was unnatural, everything stirred up anxiety. My heart grew heavier day by day. Since that day at brunch, both my mother-in-law and Mark's behavior had clearly changed. Weekend brunches were cancelled with the excuse of feeling unwell, replaced by increasing late-night phone calls. When I woke in the middle of the night, Mark was gone. Small voices leaked from the living room. Elizabeth's voice over the receiver. "There's still time. Think about that child. Don't add to your sins." I began to gradually understand the meaning of these fragmentary words I heard. But I didn't want to understand. Part of me wanted to turn away from this reality. Anxiety and loneliness enveloped me. Outside the window, rain had begun to fall. That sound drew me deeper into darkness. Even lying in bed, I couldn't sleep from nausea and anxiety. My pillow grew wet with tears. Elizabeth's phone calls grew more persistent day by day. "There's still time, Linda. Think about the child. I've already decided. I'm having this baby." My hand trembled as I placed the receiver down. The pearl necklace at my throat touched my skin coldly. Time watching movies as a couple, cooking dinner together, weekend shopping trips, all became things of the past. Replacing them were Mark's deep sighs, my mother-in-law's anxious phone calls, and my uncontrollable nausea. One night, waking to severe abdominal pain, I went to the kitchen for water. There I saw the herbal tea box thrown in the garbage. In small letters was written a warning. Avoid use if pregnant or possibly pregnant. At that moment, all the unsettling feelings connected. The dark premonition grew stronger day by day. But the life growing surely inside me. Protecting this child was now my only mission. The contractions began at midnight. Outside was pitch black darkness. A wheelchair moved quietly down the white corridors of Greenwich General Hospital. Mark pushed the wheelchair at an unnecessarily quick pace, sweat beading on his forehead. I could feel his hands trembling through the back of the chair. The hallway fluorescent lights cast our shadows on the wall. Two distorted shadows. They seemed to presage our distorting fate. Reaching the delivery room, nurses efficiently began preparations. People in white coats bustled about, monitor warning sounds rang out. The smell of disinfectant was oddly strong. The white ceiling lights felt somehow cold. You'll be fine. Just regulate your breathing. Dr. Johnson's voice rang out. He was a mild-mannered middle-aged doctor. White mixed in his hair, gentle eyes. But even his voice seemed to contain some tension. As if he sensed something. Between contractions. During the lulls between waves of pain, I observed Mark. He was unusually restless. Repeatedly checking his smartphone, sighing, and sometimes showing expressions of deep guilt. That figure had completely lost the image of the ideal husband he once was. A nurse attached heart rate sensors to my body. The monitor displayed 2 heartbeats, mother and fetus. That sound strangely constricted my heart. Did you call your mother? At my question, Mark's body stiffened for a moment. The veins in his neck stood out visibly. She's on her way now. His voice had a tremor I'd never heard before. The clock hands slowly pointed to midnight. The intervals between contractions shortened, the pain intensified. Mark's face grew increasingly pale. He stared out the window, sighing deeply many times. At that moment, Elizabeth burst into the hospital room. Her usual elegant appearance was disheveled, her hair in disarray. Linda. That cry had a painful resonance. As if she had foreseen all the events about to unfold. Mark tried to stop her, but Elizabeth shook off her son's arm. In her eyes floated the weight of a long-held secret. We can't keep hiding it anymore. The next moment, intense pain struck me. Sweat rolled down my forehead as I gripped the sheets tightly. I can see the baby. Just a little more. The doctor's voice, machine sounds, Elizabeth's crying, Mark's panicked voice. As everything mixed together in a whirlpool, I pushed with all my might. The pearl necklace at my throat touched my skin coldly. It seemed like the final symbol of a happy marriage about to crumble. A small cry rang out. At that moment, the air in the hospital room froze. Dr. Johnson stood motionless, staring at the baby. His expression showed years of professional calm crumbling in an instant. "Doctor?" The nurse's voice rang out anxiously. The movement of surrounding staff stopped. The doctor's expression changed completely. It was an expression I had never seen before, mixing anger and sadness. "Police! Call the police immediately!" Those words rang through the white hospital room like a bomb. The fluorescent lights overhead seemed to flash blindingly for a moment. "Stop!" Mark shouted. His voice was so distraught it was unrecognizable as that of the once composed investment bank manager. "Please, listen. There's a reason for this." But it was too late. Minutes later, the hospital room was filled with the sound of police sirens. Footsteps running down the hallway. Then uniformed officers entered the room one after another. Their footsteps seemed to beat the same rhythm as Mark's heartbeat. "Mr. Mark Wilson." The officer's voice rang cold. His eyes held the certainty built from years of duty. At that moment, Elizabeth took my hand. With tears distorting her face, she began to speak. Her hand was cold and trembling. 10 years ago, Mark had another child. Severely disabled, in a facility. Her words broke off. The pain of revealing a long-hidden secret seeped through her voice. The room was wrapped in heavy silence. Only the monitor sound continued marking time mercilessly. Massive treatment costs were needed. Elizabeth's voice trembled. In her eyes mixed unconditional love for her son and the anguish that came with that love. But insurance wouldn't cover it, the facility fees were enormous. Mark was aiming for a promotion. But if they knew he was the father of a disabled child? All the mysteries connected at once. The herbal tea. Frequent late-night phone calls. The hidden bank book. And my mother-in-law's abnormal reaction that day. The truth was too cruel. "You tried to induce a miscarriage." My voice was surprisingly calm. Perhaps it was an emotion beyond anger, a kind of enlightenment. Mark fell to his knees as if collapsing while being handcuffed by the police. The figure of the once dignified investment bank manager was no longer there. "I just wanted." Words that couldn't become words vanished emptily. On his back was the heavy cross of 10 years. The baby was immediately taken to intensive care. The doctor said it was to check the effects of long-term drug administration. The tiny life sleeps surrounded by IVs and monitors. In that small sleeping face showed both anxiety for the future and the strength to live despite it all. Elizabeth was sobbing on a bench in the hallway. "Forgive me. I knew, but couldn't stop it." Her figure seemed about to be crushed under an unbearable weight as a mother and as a human being. Through the white hospital room window, dawn light began to stream in. Now that all truth had been revealed, we were about to meet a new morning. The pale light, somewhat ironically, illuminated the room like a symbol of hope. But this wasn't the end, it was the beginning of a new battle. For the baby. And for myself. A year has passed since then. In a hospital room, I hold a small life in my arms. My daughter's life began surrounded by IVs and monitors. Due to the effects of the drugs, her growth faced many difficulties. But her strength to live desperately was second to none. Linda, today's test results are very good. The attending physician smiles kindly. She's been in charge of my daughter since admission. Thank you. I put heartfelt gratitude into those words. From the hospital school classroom, children's laughter can be heard. My daughter's rehabilitation continues. But her smile grows brighter day by day. Good morning, Ray. A nurse calls out. Ray. A name I gave meaning, ray of hope. My daughter responds by waving her small hand. That gesture naturally brings smiles to those around her. Mark's trial had already ended. The crime of injury through drug administration. A 5-year prison sentence. In court, all he could do was cry. But an unexpected turning point came right after that. Before being transferred to prison, Mark said he wanted to see me. The figure I saw in the visiting room was no longer the shadow of the once dignified investment bank manager, but just a father regretting his sins. I went to the facility. Mark's voice trembled. I couldn't visit even once, when that child turned 10. But I finally met him. When our eyes met, I understood. The foolishness of myself who had been running away. When I heard that story, something moved within me. The following week, I visited that facility with a heavy resolve. A quiet building surrounded by greenery. There, I met Mark's first child for the first time. James. The boy in the wheelchair had gentle eyes like Mark's. When I approached, he showed me his biggest smile. At that moment, everything changed. Now, we are building a new form of family. After Ray is discharged, we plan to leave Greenwich and move near James's facility. To begin a new life with both children. My relationship with Elizabeth has also gradually changed. She now works as a volunteer at the facility. While utilizing her experience as a former nurse, she spends her days in atonement. Every Sunday, she comes to see James. And sometimes she comes to check on Ray too. If only I had told the truth back then. Elizabeth often murmurs. But everyone has regrets. What's important is how we live from here on. That's what I've learned. The other day, while thinking about motherhood, I met a mother in the facility hallway. She who was desperately raising a child with severe disabilities said this. There's no such thing as a perfect life. But in an imperfect life, there is sure love. Those words sank deep into my heart. This morning, I gazed at the pearl necklace at my throat in the mirror for the first time in a while. What was once a symbol of happiness now holds a different meaning. It is proof of the futility of pretending to be perfect and the courage to move forward while carrying wounds. Outside the window, spring winds are blowing. Holding Ray's hand, I think. Life doesn't go as planned. But if you have the courage to face the truth, a path will surely open. My story continues on. Together with my 2 children, finding new hope. Yes, everything happens for a reason. I believe that even this trial surely had meaning.